I see we have a few people joining in. Welcome so much to today's office hours. Started a few minutes later today, but otherwise we are in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording as well as start the official stream as well. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our pre-Christmas office hours. We have only 2 left this year, and this is one of them. But my name is Jan. I'll be your host for the next hour, and as usual, I absolutely love questions. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A function here in Zoom. And I am also trying to follow a little bit on the various streams that we are live streaming too. So I'm just going to bring up that chat real quick as well, so I have a chance to see those comments. And I'm also going to do a quick sanity check on the stream itself, because that's kind of tricky to do without a second device. I'm going to use my phone for that real quick, just to see that we are live in some capacity. I can find myself, that would be great. And it sure looks like we are. I can see myself on the phone. I take that as a good sign. Now I can close that one down. All right, so any questions at all? Anything I can help you answer? And thanks for the vacation in the chat in the Zoom meeting that the video was okay. So perfect, appreciate that. So for those in the call, I'm gonna make sure I have the screen share as well here. But, that should do it. And that means we are ready for any questions that you might have. Anything at all? Got a nice comment there from Sensor Demir on Facebook that the video looks okay over there as well. Thank you for that, appreciate it. A little bit too many windows going around at the same time. See Harjit joined in as well. Good morning, Harjit. Thank you for joining. All right. So while we're waiting for the first questions to come in, I don't know if you have the chance to notice, but yesterday we did a free mini course on maximizing Windows 10 and Windows 11 network performance. So basically everything peer-to-peer. And I was joined by Phil and Andreas at 2 Point Software. And that recording is now available. So if you missed that webinar yesterday, and you want to spend an hour and actually 45 minutes, we ran over just a little bit, to learn everything related to delivery optimization, branch cache, peer cache, LADBAT, connected cache, and great little bits. That is a good, it's a good show to watch. So, I mean, after all, it's December. Hopefully there will be a time for you to catch up on good TV shows and movies and whatnot. And why not add this one to the list? It's a great one. If you have family and friends, do invite them. Kids, even better. They will love it. It's a good movie. Highly recommend it. Some of these findings we also publish on the blog post that goes out later today, in fact, where we have been combining our recommendations on delivery optimization settings for Intune in the blog post, and basically showing the metrics behind it and letting you know that with a few checkboxes in the Intune platform, you can actually speed up deployments quite a bit from a setup and installation download point of view. But other than that, any questions at this point? Right. Gonna switch over to this one so we can see the screen a little bit better. And that's something I wanted to highlight just because we had such a great time yesterday testing things. If you go to a configuration profile in Intune and do a little bit of changes in terms of DO settings, and obviously deploy that to your clients as well. But this is not much, but this is basically what we found really optimizes the DO traffic, the peer-to-peer capabilities when doing Intune type deployments. So this is half of the trick by making sure that we have certain critical settings configured, like this little friend here that is not very known, but it actually affects performance quite a bit in terms of peer-to-peer effectiveness. It can jump up to 20% just by setting this one. And I have seen very few customers even knowing what this is and even knowing what to set it. Also giving the DO servers a little bit time to actually find friends on the local network, and as well removing the default limits on when to share files, but rather than sharing only some files, try to share many more files that you have in your environment. So these are all like recommended settings. What we also find in our research, it's primarily Phil. I spent weeks and weeks trying out different scenarios here, but on the applications themselves, when you have Win32 apps, which can be peered and will be peered by delivery optimization, the trick to these guys is to making sure that the deployment, well, I call it deployment, Intune calls assignment because I come from a ConfigMgr background. No, I don't want to do updates right now, thank you. The trick is to say that the content should be in foreground. This, ladies and gentlemen, doubles the speed. The download goes twice as fast if you do this compared to the default configuration, which is background. So I was just using, I think I still have it here at some point somewhere. I was being lazy, obviously. Yeah, I just wrote a little PowerShell snippet that connect to Microsoft Graph and loops through all applications that contains peer-to-peer in the name. That was my test applications, and then just flips them over to do foreground rather than background. And that's good. Look, ran for maybe 10 seconds, then they were all configured. So certainly doable. So there was a question coming in the chat here on the Zoom call. Do you have any advice for someone considering moving into consulting from being a sysadmin for the same company for years? Well, I can't tell you what it is to be a sysadmin, but I can tell you what it is to be a consultant. And because that's what I've been doing my entire life. I dropped out of college back in, good Lord, 30-some years ago. And I've been doing consulting since. I got an offer that I simply couldn't refuse from a consulting company in the town where I lived, where, hey, you want to do IT consulting? And I've been an IT guy since I was 10. So I was like, oh yes, this is my dream. I'm going for it. I was set out to be a mechanical engineer. That obviously didn't happen. So I ended up in IT instead. But as far as advice goes, it's a very different thing moving from company to company to company as a consultant, especially if you do shorter term engagements. The longer term contract, if you get like a 3 or 6 months, that is pretty much like being employed. That you kind of get the same feeling. You feel like you're part of the normal employee crew after a while. But if you only work for a customer for, say, a week or two, that's more like a core consulting role where you go in and you do something and then head out when you're done. Or you may have an ongoing contract where you work with them maybe once a day, once a week, or something like that. When you work for a company as a full-time admin, obviously you will learn very, very much about that environment and get extremely good at that environment. As a consultant, you are going to work with many, many different environments. And you're going to have to spend a lot more time in research and verifying things in lab environments, etc., before you can go out and do them in customer environments. Because unfortunately, not all customers have their own lab and test environment. And often a customer would kind of expect you to have done your homework first. Whereas a sysadmin, if there's something new that you don't know about, you usually do that at your normal work time. So as a sysadmin, you'd basically dedicate 100% to your organizations, which obviously that's why you're there, that's why they're paying you. But as a consultant, you rarely have goals to be, I mean, I've seen everything from 65% billable hours up to 80% billable hours. But I can't think of any company I've seen that has higher than that. Most, I would say, is in the 70, 75% range. And the idea behind that is that the other time that is not billable, that's where you learn stuff so that you can be billable. So every consultant out there, or for every consultant out there, I highly, highly recommend to get a lab or two up and running so that you can play around and test and reset things so that you then later can help customers with those particular things. So I think that's like the biggest shift. And then there is also this question, okay, cool. Should I go to a consulting company where somebody else sells my time, or should I start my own business and try to sell that time? And I cannot answer that question for you, but what I do know, because I meet a lot of people in the industry and being part of that journey myself, being worked both for traditional consulting companies and also having my own company. And it can be pretty stressful to constantly sell your own time and also do all the work around it. I mean, if you get work, you can book your calendar way ahead, perfectly fine. But for example, now in the last 2 years, when the pandemic hit, I have seen just a generic trend in the industry that consulting work is in less demand compared to what it was before. And if you have your own company and that's only you, and you're basically, you won't be able to pay your bills unless you can fill your calendar with work. That can be pretty stressful. I think it's simpler in that case to work for a consulting company where it has a larger amount of people that sort of spread that load, and you can take advantage of having a large organization behind you. It's a bit of a rambling, but consulting is great fun if you happen to like it. So by all means, try. But it is a very different job compared to being a sysadmin with a company, for sure. Got a question up on the Facebook feed that we're doing. Is it better to use the ECP scope options with vendor class policy versus IP helpers for MDT and WDS? So basically, we want to do pixel deployments. What is the best way to redirect clients so that can actually find the pixel server in question? And I actually had an update. I wonder if I can find that one. It was a classic. We're making a little picture here. So this is from, I believe, last year. Not logged in right now. No, 2 years ago. So this was 2 years ago, and I actually learned something new. I learned that TCP scope options was not entirely as bad as I thought they were going to be in these times. Still, I will hold dear that IP helpers is way easier on everyone. It's very, very simple in the configuration of the switches, and you're having them anyway for DSP IP addressing. So just add one more for PXE. So basically, you should always use IP helpers if you have the chance. And I would go to pretty great length in arguing with the network team to have that done. And before that time in 2019, I would practically never use DSP options. Today, I will still go through all this hoop of trying to get IP helpers, but TCP options will work if you do it right. There is one advantage to those. They kind of offload the PXE server a little bit. So one of our customers, they have 55,000 clients connecting to a single PXE server. And obviously that's quite a significant number of connections, and TCP scope options actually will leave the server a little bit of CPU over to do other things, but that is usually so little, so it doesn't even matter. But we do have the company where I work the most with, 2 Point Software. Andreas put together a pretty good article on those. I think I linked to that article here, actually, thinking of it. Yeah. So if you want to do TCP scope options, again, use IP helpers if you can, but there are quite the settings that you need to configure to support both BIOS and UEFI-based machines. So I'll be happy to put this link in the chat there. This happens to be for our PXE server, but PXE is PXE, so it doesn't matter. You would do the same configuration for Microsoft PXE server or any PXE server for that matter that you can use. So I'll put that in the chat to have it available. Let's see what else. I mean, that's pretty much it. Use IP helpers when you can, and fall back to TCP scope options if you cannot. More complicated. I remember one point I put together a script somewhere. I wonder if this somewhere was here. Nope. Either. Might have to give up on that one, but I figured out how through PowerShell go in and create those scope options. It doesn't. think of one more location to check, so I'm gonna do that one. No, I cannot find that script at the moment. It's probably somewhere. But you can do that through PowerShell for sure. That kind of setting. Any other questions? Hey, what do you know? Oh, I had it somewhere. Oh, here's a bit of PowerShell that configures all these fancy options for TCP scopes, in this case for a specific scope. You can also have it to all the scopes, obviously. But yeah, it's not too terribly complicated. Ready-made command that's for it in Windows. And it sure beats clicking through and create all these different vendor classes and policies and whatnot. Probably share that script. Running out disk space too. It's a bad day. I will get that up to, that was not the location. This was the location. Copy that over to a different machine. But I have my GitHub repo. In just a moment. And Matt is asking, is this live? Yeah, this is definitely live. Had it been prepared, I would have been more prepared. But this is live. All right. Fun enough, it's been uploaded here. So on this link, you have that script that I just showed you. Should have started this way, but I'll put that link in the chat for you guys. And for the videos on YouTube, I'll try to add it to the description as soon as that recording is done. Matt says it says 12:15. Yeah, it might be the label on the live stream that I didn't or forgot to change on the title. Sorry about that. But as you can see, it's clearly not December 15. It's about 9:29. It's December 22nd, which is today, and I live in Chicago, so I'm on Central Time. Can probably give you some sort of proof that it's not rehearsed. MSN maybe. That is definitely today. So, yep, good stuff. All right. Any other questions? I should probably update those titles for next time. Brian is asking, how do you feel about using alternate download managers like Nomad, OneSite, etc.? I feel pretty good about them, using them, especially since the company I work for, we developed one as well. And the nice one about that one is it's actually free. We do offer support options as well, but we have a product called OST Toolkit. This one enables bits and branch cache functionality in Windows PE together with an alternate download or content provider, download manager, as they call it, or ACP, alternate content provider, so that you can, during sequences, actually leverage branch cache for peer-to-peering of content. And you can get some significant speed when doing this. So in general, even though I obviously hope that everyone would like what we are doing and use our tools and things, peer-to-peer, in my opinion, as a concept, is absolutely amazing. Because it reduces the WAN traffic quite a bit, not just internet when we're talking about the traffic, but also internal WAN link traffic when we're talking about config traffic. Me and my good friend Michael Nystrom and Michael Niehaus and a few others, we even figured out how we can extend the free deployment solutions that Microsoft has, MDT, to also support peer-to-peer through branch cache. Because it all comes down to why putting out hundreds of servers out there if you can just click a few buttons and have software doing the work for you. I mean, if you guys look on the server side, Microsoft has for years implemented more and more software-defined, everything, storage, networking, whatnot, so that instead of buying $600,000 SAN, you buy 2 servers for $20,000 and you implement functionality and software rather than spending all that money on a very proprietary hardware. The same goes for content distribution, in my opinion. If you can leverage peer-to-peer without having to put out hundreds of servers out there, I think it's for the better. And you will also see that performance and network traffic in general is just going to be much, much better. So all in all, long answer to a short question, I'm for it. I do recommend leveraging peer-to-peer when you have the chance. The company I work for, we mainly develop things that are based on top of the Microsoft platform. So we work with data optimization, peer cache, and branch cache. We don't have our own networking stack. We simply leverage what Microsoft happened to be using out of the box in the product. And then we extend it with additional functionality and in some of the other cases, visualization, so you can actually see what's going on in real time in the environment. Because Microsoft, even though they have, even in ConfigMgr, they have very basic monitoring. Look in the right place, it will be grateful. But this information by default is 24 hours old, and it's not very real time at all. So I prefer real time stuff. Let's see, another question from Matt. Why is the best, or what are the best tools or ways to check WMI? I'm assuming client health in general here for ConfigMgr. These days in Windows 10 and Windows 11, we are definitely seeing fewer WMI troubles. compared to what we have in Windows 7 or even worse back in the Windows XP days where it was very, very common. But there are things you still can do to make sure things are operational as they should be. The best tool I know out there is from a friend, Anders Rödlund. He's doing a PowerShell course here on the Academy. This one here, if I can search for PowerShell, it would be great. This one. And in that course, he takes you through using his ConfigMgr client health solution. It's been around for a good few years. It's a free tool. It's by far the best free tool you can find related to ConfigMgr client health. And this tool and the scripts that are being used in the background verifies quite many things on the client that allows you to make sure it's healthy, or at least get an indication when clients are not healthy. So it's not the only solution out there. I mean, for example, Microsoft have been for years offering as part of their consulting engagements, their own client health check. So one might ask why this is not included in ConfigMgr. Well, it's not as part of their consulting services to improve the platform, but this is not cheap. These engagements are pretty dang costly. And in my opinion, you will get far by using this. I mean, this is great, don't get me wrong, but it adds a few dollars to the bill. For being free, this is done with it. And this is what I love about the ConfigMgr community. So many people are investing time and resources and creating all these fantastic solutions, often available for everyone to use without cost or other price to it. Yeah. But Dennis had a question on our YouTube channel. Basically, how can we convert applications to use DFS for content instead of a file share? I mean, first of all, DFS is fantastic to use as a content for package sources because it allows you to basically reroute traffic, add more disk space and everything without having to do a single change in ConfigMgr. If you need to do a change, it's basically the same thing as you would migrate from one file server to another, or if you migrate from one ConfigMgr site server to another ConfigMgr site server. And what you need there is obviously a Nikolai in your life. He has written a content transfer PowerShell script. See if I can find it. Here we go. It's a few years old, still works beautifully, but it's simply a tool where you specify the new location for the packages, you run it, and it updates the source for it. And I believe the later versions also copies the files. I might have to check that one. But let me first give you the link, and then I will start the tool, and we can see what's going on there. River City Global had a version of this as well back in the days. I haven't seen that one in a few years though. So let me grab that tool. I'm going to copy it up to my site server. Use this one here. Demo content transfer something. put the tool in there, extract it, and run it. That's not content, is it? Server CM1. Here we go. So this is basically where you type in the source and the replacement. And here is the option to say copy the content, packages and whatnot. So this allows you to very easy to change the location of packet sources. I have anything I can show. Well, since I checked this one out, but I definitely have some there. And it did find a bunch of packages. So if I wanted to change the path on my custom scripts package, which is currently pointing to here, I want to change it to here so that it now goes to my sources folder. I should be able to do that and say update, and it should now have updated that package, copy the content over to my sources to share for that package, and it should have also updated the package source for that package. See what package it was. It was the custom scripts. So yeah, it now says sources 2 here. And obviously you can have replaced that with a different server, or you can have replaced that with a namespace for DFS. I believe one of my file servers here is part of a DFS namespace. I should be able to do that. Yeah, so this is a DFS namespace I have on one of my file servers available. So obviously, what I could have done is the same operation, but using this one instead. So if I want to change that one around, I can do that, and I can go to update. I do it now. You couldn't copy the files though. Wonder if that is a permission issue or something. I have to probably show that later, but I think you get the idea. Worst case, we copy them. I actually did copy it. Looks like it didn't like the space in the name. Anyhow, copy the package over, and it certainly updated it again to use a data source here. I did not update the namespace one more time. Not sure why. I did it first time. Might be a bug. Try to do it again. Close the tool. Right. Try that one. Try to update it again. Oh, this time it worked. Now it has the DFS namespace. The only thing I can think of was that maybe something was on in the background. You didn't have a chance to update it, but it did work. Change the content, copied it over. Life is good. So the follow-up question is, when you change package data sources, does it usually trigger a distribution? Yes, it usually does. Good news is that content library itself is pretty good in not recopying content unless you also change a version, but it does do that extra validation for you. This is something that ConfigMgr customers who are insisting on trying to save time in backup, so they don't back up the content library because they know it's going to rebuild when you restore. Yeah, sure it will, but it can take 13 hours to rebuild it. And it can take 2 weeks to get the new content copied out because it's going to bump up the version by 1. So going cheap on backend storage is not entirely ideal. I mean, technically you don't need it. And it's a small lab environment. You have 50 packages, I couldn't care less. But production environments, make a copy of the content library so you can actually restore it quickly rather than having to wait for a rebuild that just goes for hours and hours and hours. Let's see, there was a CM pivot question coming in. How to check if a certificate is available or not using CM pivots. Can't say I have tried that one. I mean, you can certainly check for files. You can search for registry keys, but I'm not sure if there is a search thing that you can search for. Possibly. Good friend Google has to think about that. How can I use SimPivot to find certificates? People basically are saying to use a CI instead. That kind of gives me an indication that you cannot search for certs through it. I mean, you can obviously, there is something obvious here. Well, there is a certificate store, but that is for more love on that one for sure. Probably need to be part of that one. find an example on that. There are not many people who have been searching for that one. Sorry, don't have a good answer for that one. Might only be for, let me go to a PKI environment that I happen to have. Could have at least 2 clients on that one. Because these do have certificates. Nope, this is for something else. It looks like it does not show certificates at all. So I think you're better off with the CI to get track of that, or use Intune to find information about certificates, because those options are built in. Anyone in the community happen to know, feel free to chime in, send me a tweet, post a comment, whatever. So there was a question from Steve regarding want to move away from hybrid Azure AD join. Yeah, that's a good one. Is there a good way to using an OST sequence to basically have a join Azure Active Directory as part of that? Yes, if you combine it with Autopilot, it's fairly straightforward to do that. I think that's the best way to do automatic enrollment as part of imaging. ConfigMgr does come with an example. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but they do have an autopilot deployment sequence for existing devices. And that's not one. Let me create one. I think I have one here. Created it. Well, I can create one. Right sequence, autopilot to existing devices, autopilot demo 1, pick a boot image, performance, an image, part of this one here. Perfect, perfect. No updates, no apps. And the prep package is going to be your autopilot package. And the content of this particular package is the JSON file that you download from your tenant. So in my tenant here, I have a bunch of different deployment profiles. And if I want to download any of these, I will have to do it through PowerShell. So I will open up a PowerShell script. and I will install some modules, import them in, connect to Graph, and then I can list the same profiles in PowerShell, and I can download one of them into a JSON file and code it to ASCII. It's required because this file now has my autopilot profile configured. And that way I can then on my site server in my autopilot package, I can just reference that file. Because what the sequence is going to do, it's going to, during imaging, it's going to copy that file into a special folder in Windows. And then it's going to use it. The challenge with this is timing, basically. And what I found more reliable is to use PowerShell scripts that I run to make sure that the client sends the request to a web service, and then that web service in question will take care of doing all the registration, where you can add in a lot more controls. You can wait for machines being imported, looping, waiting. You can wait for machines being synced into Intune. You can making sure that the groups you're trying to add them to actually exist. And you can wait until they get an assignment, and you can put in a lot more controls with scripting. And that gives you better reliability on the enrollment process in general. Stay away from dynamic groups and move over to a more scripting approach, and you will see that automatic autopilot deployments in sequences will become more reliable. My 2 cents. So I hope I answered that question. Any other questions? Let's see, Konstantin had a question on YouTube. I know of any issues on managed apps in the admin portal. Apparently they have apps that have been showing waiting for install for 5 days. I haven't heard anything lately from that part, but I mean, the Max, who's behind the Twitter alias Intune support team, I think. Yeah, they are actually pretty good in responding to questions that you might have on service outages or something going on in a specific area, specific region, something like that. If it doesn't show up in the help portals that you have in the dashboard, it's a good idea to just throw away a tweet to this account. They've been pretty good and responding every now and then. So it's nothing I have seen lately. Matt is asking, how can you use a sequence to upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11? That is no different from going from one Windows 10 version to the next using sequences. So yes, the traditional upgrade sequence, ConfigMgr 2107 and later have been tested with it. My only recommendation is to play around with some virtual machines first before you try to do it on normal machines until you nail the sequence down. But other than that, it works the same. It's the same type of upgrade sequences as anything else. From a ConfigMgr point of view, it doesn't care. Actually, I have one here that I was playing around with. Looks like this. Single sequence. I usually recommend breaking it out in 2. So you have validation in 1 and upgrade in 1. But Sequence is a sequence. But answer that question a little bit. All right. Any final questions before we call it a day? Chat, Q&A, well as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and YouTube. All right, I think that was it for now. It's 10 a.m. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and happy holidays to all of you. And I hope to see you again either next week if you happen to be working, or at some point in 2022. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the week, and see you out there. Thank you.